Okay, guys, in Grimerica tonight, we've got Scott Creighton. We're going to be talking about his latest book, The Secret Chamber of Osiris, and his new book he's working on, and probably some other stuff too. We always seem to find our way everywhere else. But first, how's it going, buddy?
Hey, it's good, Darren. I'm looking forward to getting back into Egypt here.
Yeah, it seems like it's been a while. It's been long enough since Paradigm to get back into Egypt.
Yeah, and now we're sort of trending that way. We were talking about the Giza Plateau a few weeks back, and now we're going to be getting back into it. The pyramids, and Scott's got some essays and some presentations on his website too. One of them we want to get into called The Gravity Cubit. He's got a new book coming out as well that's not out yet called The Great Pyramid Hoax, which we want to get into. So he's been one of these guys kind of alongside of like the Robert Bauval type and all that. He's been investigating the pyramids and some of the conspiracies around it. So I guess we'll let Scott explain the rest of it. We're just happy to have you in here, Scott. Sorry about all the hassles, and thanks for staying up late for us. So welcome to Grimerica.
Hi guys, it's great to be here. Pleased to be talking to you at last, and looking forward to a good show.
Yeah, that's great. So we should start, I guess, with the latest book that just came out. I guess, The Secret Chamber of Osiris. But I don't want to forget to get into some of your other fascinating presentations, especially the Gravity Cubit one, because we just did, a podcast about the Giza Plateau and looking at all the sacred geometry and all the different principles that plateau follows in the construction and the architecture. So I want to get into that too.
Okay, yeah. That's great. Well, the new book, the Secret Chamber of Osiris, the Lost Knowledge of the 16 Pyramids. That's my most recent book, which came out in December, Christmas Day. There actually just passed, and the material on the Gravity Cubit. My goodness, I haven't discussed that in a long time. That was in my previous book, the Giza Prophecy, which came out December 2014. So that's gone back a week. No, sorry, not 2014, 2012.
I was going to say you're giving Nick Redfern a run for his money.
Yeah, December 2011, just tipping into 2012 was the Giza Prophecy. So yeah, that's a wee while ago now. But The Secret Chamber of Osiris, that's my latest book. Basically, as you were saying earlier, a lot of the work I do is building on the work of some of the guys, the giants, if you like, that have been the trailblazers for this whole genre. That's the alternative, history, alternative Egyptology genre. The guys like Bauval, Hancock, the late great Alan Alford, Philip Coppens, these guys, so I kind of read a lot of their work, and basically I've been building on it. I've been filling, some of the gaps that those guys have maybe overlooked, and come up with my own sort of view on things, which I have to say is a little bit different from what most people have been saying. What the structures at Giza and in Egypt in general are all about.
So, were you traveling down there researching this type of stuff physically?
Yeah. Well, I went to Egypt in 2008 met up with Robert Bauval and Graham Hancock there, and just my key purpose for going at the time was I'd come up with a theory. It's called, I don't know if you've read this in my book. It's called the centroid theory, and basically this theory uses the Great Pyramids at Giza, the three main pyramids at Giza, and you use them with very simple geometry, very, very basic geometry, and called centroid geometry. And using that type of geometry, it basically works to point those, to create a triangle around those three pyramids. It's a very unique triangle based on centroid geometry using the three center points of those three pyramids. And they create this unique triangle which points to a location to the southwest of the Giza pyramid field. And I basically went in 2008 to try and get to that location because I suspect, I suspected then, I still suspect that there may be something of significance, something of value, something very, very ancient under the sands at that location. I explained in the book, The Secret Chamber, that's where I believe the secret chamber is located, and I explain in the book what the secret chamber is and how I came up with the whole concept. I mean, we hear ancient traditions talk of secret chambers, the secret chamber of Osiris, where the books of Osiris are locked away in an underground vault somewhere in Egypt. We hear about the Hall of Records. There's all these ancient traditions that have been passed down to us from the Egyptians themselves, ancient Egyptians, from the Romans, from the Greeks. We read in the Hermetica tradition of these secret chambers of lost knowledge buried somewhere in Egypt. And I came up with this. There's one text which tells us that the secret chamber, the books of Osiris, will be found by three. Now, it doesn't say what the three is or the three are. It just says it will be found by the three. And I took that, some people have interpreted this to mean, three people will find this chamber at some point in the future, whereas what I suspect it means, it's talking about the three giant pyramids of Giza point to this in some unique geometrical way, which I developed basically, and I found that the three great pyramids, using them together, can create one unique triangle. Using the three most ancient centroids in mathematics, the three most ancient centroids in mathematics. You just basically place them around the three giant pyramids, and there you go. It creates this triangle, which points to this location. Now, the reason also I came up with the centroid theory was because I was trying to explain, I don't know if you're aware, guys, that the Great Pyramid hasn't got four sides.
It's got six, right?
Eight sides. As has the smaller, very close. As has the smallest pyramid at Giza, the G3, the pyramid of Menkaura. That's the same. That's got these unique, they're called concavities, where each pyramid face is slightly indented at the sides towards the center. On
but not in a like purposeful kind of. It's like a perfect line down the middle, right?
Yeah, it's perfect indent straight down the middle. You see this indentation. You can only see it at certain time of the year. That's at the equinox.
Oh, and this is the Great Pyramid you're talking about?
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I don't think I've ever really seen that.
That phenomenon. Yeah,
clear enough. Yeah.
Yeah. The only time you can see it is at the equinox, when the sun is rising at the equinox. Because of this indentation, this slight indentation, because the pyramid is perfectly aligned to the cardinal directions, when the sun is rising perfectly due east, it's hitting the pyramid perfectly side on, which means the southwest face of this, the south face of the pyramid is split into two. Because one side is face on to the sun and the other side is still in darkness, you get this light and shade effect on the southern face of the pyramid. Well, I saw the southern face. I presume it happens in the northern face as well, side on, as the sun's rising. So you can see this phenomenon, and it's because it's caused by these slight indentations. And Egyptologists cannot tell us why the heck they did this. They've made life immeasurably more difficult in building this structure by doing this. So we still have no real idea why they did this. Some people think, well, it's to mark the equinox. Bang. It certainly does do that because you can see the light and shadow, and it's the only time of the year that you can see this as the sun is rising. But then you would only need to do that in one pyramid, the Great Pyramid. Why would, to mark the equinoxes, if you wanted to do that, you wanted people to know, right, this is the equinox, look, there's the pyramid, it's in light and shade, the southern face is in light and shade. They wouldn't need the smaller of the three pyramids to do that as well. You would really only need one pyramid to do that. So why did they do it with the smaller pyramid as well? Why is the smaller and why has the middle one not got these concrepities? So I was trying to find a way of explaining all this, and it turns out it's related, or at least I think it's related to centroid geometry. That's where I got the idea. Well, that's partly where I get the idea. The main idea was actually my son. He came in and asked me one day, he was doing a maths project, and he said, Dad, how do you find the center of a triangle? That was his question. And I went, oh, good question. It depends on the type of triangle. A triangle, unless it's an equilateral triangle, doesn't have a perfect center, or it has a center of gravity, but it doesn't, unless it's all three sides are equal, it doesn't have a perfect center. So this is.
So what did you find out? Because I don't know. I'm just thinking. I don't know. My thought is you'd draw a line from the point through the center of the opposite side, and you could maybe do it like if you kept doing that somehow. You could. If I had paper, maybe I could figure it out.
Yeah. Well, basically, if you think of a triangle, is that Darren?
Yep, that's Darren.
Yeah, Darren.
Sick Darren.
Sick Darren. That's not well. What basically, if you look at a triangle, obviously I don't want to go too deep into this because geometry thing just turns a lot of people off. So I'll just say it very quickly and briefly. If you take any triangle, you can put a circle around the three outside corners of the triangle. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you can join the three outside corners of the triangle with a circle. And then if you find the center of that circle, it marks a spot within the triangle. Yeah. That's called that's a centroid. It's called the circumcenter centroid. You can then take
on a real weird triangle, the center could end up almost outside it?
It could, yes, it could, absolutely. Depending on the nature of the triangle. So essentially what I did was I did the reverse. I took the 3 points of the pyramid, the 3 center points of the pyramid, and I worked out this triangle in reverse. Yeah?
Okay.
So, and basically creates a unique triangle which points to the southwest part of the Giza Plateau. And that is where I suspected this Hall of Record would be found by the three pyramids, the 3 centroids. That was my gut instinct. And so, and I went there in 2008 to try and reach this location in the desert to the southwest of the plateau, probably about 2 or 3 kilometers to the southwest of the plateau. And I took with me a small capstone. It was more really a homage that I was doing. I wanted to go there to kind of pay my respects to the incredible builders of these structures, and which I believe, incidentally, for good reason, which I may come into later on, are much, much older than Egyptologists are telling us. They tell us these are 4,500 years old. No.
What do you think?
Well, I think they're in the order of 19,000 years old.
That would put them, that's almost like probably lines up with Göbekli Tepe and shit, really.
Well, yeah, Göbekli Tepe is about 12,000 years old, something the order of that.
Yeah, but I thought that was buried 12,000 years ago.
Yeah, exactly. So, it just seems to me that, the more we keep digging, the deeper we dig, the deeper we dive. We're finding that our history is going further and further. The history of civilization, I'm not talking about hunter-gatherers. I'm talking about civilization that has been pushed further and further back in time. There was an article, I think it was October 2013, New Scientist. There's a brilliant article talking about the dawn of civilization, how science is having to push it further and further back in time. So people like Graham Hancock, who basically his theory of a lost civilization, I think there's a lot to that.
Mm-hmm.
We're finding fragments of this global civilization all over the world, but we're having to push, the dates further and further back to make all the pieces fit, but in the book, The Secret Chamber of Osiris, I present evidence based loosely on Robert Bauval's pioneering work about the Orion correlation theory, but taking that idea much, much further and much deeper than Bauval did. Great credit to Bauval. He took something, he saw something, and he ran with it, and he brought the whole idea to an audience, a worldwide audience that probably wouldn't have happened without Bauval doing that. So I've taken Bauval's the basics of Bauval's idea. But there's bits that Bauval missed at Giza, which I haven't missed. So basically, I show how Bauval thought the structures could be dated to 10,000, 10,000 BC, 10,500 BC, something like that. But I show that actually he's missed a part of the jigsaw puzzle at Giza, and the date is actually 19,000 or 17,000 BC, which is kind of in
the middle of the Ice Age, isn't it?
Well, yeah. Well,
Egypt would have been cool in the Ice Age, though. It probably would have been all green and shit.
Yeah, that's right. Back then, we're talking about the Ice Age. That's the time the Ice Age came to an end. And we still don't know really for sure what was the precise trigger event for that end. Why did the ice sheets, the vast ice sheets that covered the North American continent and the European continent, what was the trigger for these?
Think Randall and Graham are coming out with a pretty good idea on that.
Who?
Randall Carlson and Graham Hancock.
Yeah. Well, there's a number of possibilities, but the point I'm making is that the ancient Egyptians themselves tell us that one of the traditions or legends that have come down to us is that King Saurid of ancient Egypt, his astronomer priests went to him to tell him that the stars in the heavens had moved out of their place. They'd moved off their normal course. And the King Saurid asked, well, what does this mean? And the astronomer priests told Saurid it means that in 300 years from now, there will be a great deluge, which will destroy the entire kingdom, which will destroy everything in the land. And after that, it will be followed by a devastating drought. Now, Saurid then instructed the people that what they were going to do was to build pyramids. And in those pyramids, they would place everything inside them that they would need to rebuild their kingdom again after the worst effects of the drought, the deluge had passed. And this is what, they would build everything that was of esteem, place everything that was of esteem inside these pyramids, and in the hope that survivors could use the contents of those pyramids to reboot be like the ancient Egyptian civilization. And it's remarkable to me that there's a couple of physicists, a guy called Wolfley and Baltensperger, a couple of, I think they're Norwegian physicists, who came out with a paper a few years, I think it's 2007, which basically shows that, we don't need a massive, Earth-size object to collide with the Earth for the Earth to lose or its axis to change. We don't need a massive, that would extinguish everything on the planet if something like that happened. What they were talking about was an object, fairly large object passing close by the Earth, and that could cause enough tidal friction on the Earth's surface to cause the Earth's poles to rapidly migrate to another part of the planet. And they've done all sorts of calculations that bear this out. And what they're saying is that the pole, about 19,000 years ago, the Earth's pole was located roughly about 72, 73 degrees north now. That's central Greenland now. That's where they say the pole was, and it migrated over a space of about 400 days to the Arctic Sea, where the pole is now. Now, that's a shift of about 17, 18 degrees. And that caused these massive ice sheets to suddenly be pushed into a warmer climate. They're getting more solar radiation, causing them obviously to melt over a long period of time. And this tilt that they say happened about 19,000 years ago ties in with the story that the Egyptians are telling us, that the stars moved out of the place, and they expected that it would result in a great flood. And I have in the book, I've shown how the structures at Giza date to 19,000 years ago, to the same time frame, So I think all this whole thing is all part of the same event. That the ancient Egyptians were building these structures. I say in the book that they were building 16 pyramids. That was their plan, was to build 16 pyramids. That was their Project Osiris. So
they were basically a bunch of preppers back then.
Yeah, you could look at it like that. Look at it that way, but in the sense that they actually physically, according to the legends, they actually saw something in the heavens that wasn't right. I don't know of any preppers today have seen anything in the heavens that isn't right. Maybe some have, I don't know. But they feel as if they actually saw something in the heavens that disturbed them and felt that it was going to threaten their kingdom. So they basically took steps. It could do nothing. They could do nothing and be absolutely certain that their kingdom would be lost forever, or they could elect to actually try and do something about it, and that's what they did.
So you think that basically they saw this shift happen because the star, basically the astronomy changed, really, and then they realized that was going to cause something afterwards, like about 300 years after.
I wonder, what do you think the chances are that it could have been because the running theme we have on the show is lately anyway, is the impact theory.
Yeah.
Do you think it could be twisted around the mythology that they seen some shit coming from space and that it ended up impacting the ice sheet? Because that's the coolest thing I've heard lately on it.
Yeah, well, what these two physicists are actually trying to do is they're not just explaining one event. They're actually, the ice ages on the Earth have only been happening for about, I think it's something like 3 million years. Well, why weren't we having ice ages before 3 million years ago? So their hypothesis or theory is that this object came into the Earth's solar system 3 million years ago, and that's what caused the 100,000-year ice ages that we have every so often, this object. And then gradually the object was becoming closer and closer to the Earth. And then 20,000 years ago, it got so close to the Earth that it caused a shift. And because it was so close, it actually started to break up itself. But it didn't break up instantly. It broke up over thousands of years. It wasn't a one-time event. This is what these guys are saying. This happened over a long, long period of time. The initial pole shift, they reckon, was about 20,000 years ago, but the object broke up probably in the Pliocene, but going into the Holocene. You're talking about it may have been this object breaking up which caused the Carolina bays. These. I think there's something like 500,000 of them, these sort of impact craters in Carolina, in the USA. I don't know if you're aware of that. And all sorts of, comets that, like Phaeton and Wormwood, that we hear in the Bible. All these things are all part of the same object breaking up over thousands of years. And there was probably one of the last impacts was probably about 2345 BC. And the Australian astronomer George Dodwell, I don't know if you've heard of him, he has actually analysed ancient structures going back to the Temple of Karnak, all the way back to 2,500 BC, and he has actually shown that the Earth's axial tilt, which according to our modern science can only tilt between the parameters of about 22.5 to 24 and a bit degrees. It can't go any further than that. But this guy has shown through his analysis, scientific analysis of these ancient structures going all the way back and all the way into to modern observations of the Earth's axis. He's looked at the alignment of these structures, and he's basically worked out that the Earth's axis in the year 2345 BC was 26.5 degrees. Now, according to our science, that's impossible. According to our modern science, that is impossible. So this is a guy who's presented physical evidence that our pole, the axis of the Earth, was completely different from what our modern science predicts it should have been. So something was definitely going on, and something was going on to the planet for a very, very long time.
I wonder if that fits in with like the Nibiru myths and stuff like that. Because it would seem like, do you think it's something on some sort of an orbit that comes around every once in a while, or is this a one-off that just kind of took a long time to play out?
Well, this is what these physicists Wolfley and Baltensperger have been saying, is that this orbit, this object has been in the solar system for a long, long time. They reckon that probably most of it is now broken up. Some of it crashed into the Earth, the Carolina bays probably, and lots of other, the Burkle crater, which caused massive devastation round about 10,000 BC, roughly round about in the Holocene. It probably caused, it was impacting the Earth, for several thousands of years, but most of it is probably gone now. But there could still be, remnants of it out there in the solar system that every so often the Earth passes through, because the Earth and the Sun aren't stationary in the universe. We're part of the arm of a massive galaxy, the spiral of a massive galaxy, which is swinging through space. So this arm of our galaxy could eventually pass through, whatever's out there again. But that's all speculation. The simple point I'm trying to make is that the dates tie up. You see, one of the other things that the Great Pyramid, I speculate in the book, these shafts in the Great Pyramid, they're called star shafts or air shafts. They're only about 8 inches square. these shafts, and they go all the way through the body of the pyramid. The King's Chamber ones go all the way through from the King's Chamber to the outside face of the pyramid. And there's two of them. One goes south, one goes north. Same with the Queen's Chamber. One goes north, one goes south, although these ones don't actually penetrate to the outside of the actual pyramid. Now, what I speculate these shafts are actually showing, which I explain in the book, is that they're actually... The Great Pyramid represents Al-Nitak of Orion's Belt. The three pyramids at Giza represent Orion's Belt. The Great Pyramid represents Al-Nitak in Orion's Belt. Now, what these shafts are actually showing, pointed to, they're not pointing to different stars. They're pointing to the same star. The lower shaft is pointing from the Queen's Chamber, is pointing to Al-Nitak before it moved in the sky. It moved up 6 degrees, or thereabouts 6 degrees, and then the King's Chamber shaft is pointing to its new position. It's saying this is how much it moved.
How much of that can the precession account for? Or I wonder if the precession could even be blamed on it.
Well, precession for that would take something like 1,600 years. For the star, the pyramid was only built, they reckon, about 20 years. Well, that's what Egyptologists tell us anyway. But what I believe they're showing us is the former position of the star Al-Nitak on the southern horizon. It was at 39 degrees, and it moved up to 45 degrees or thereabouts. Now, the northern shafts, they do the opposite. They go the opposite direction, and that's exactly what would happen if the south side of the sky moves up, the northern side of the sky moves down, and that's exactly what the shafts are showing us. So the northern shafts are basically just mirroring the effect in the north to what's happening in the south. They're not. It's all about one star, Al-Nitak. And that's what the ancient Egyptians themselves tell us, about the Orion constellation. It's about one star. And that star, I believe, is Al-Nitak. I believe the shafts are pointing to that star's former position and its later position after the pole shift. Now, this is only, as I said, this is only a shift of about 6 degrees, yeah? Now, and that is what they are showing us. They're showing us the skies moved 6 degrees, and that's what their legends tell us. The stars moved out of their normal course. But wait a minute. I said earlier that the pole moved from central Greenland to the Arctic Sea, and that was a shift of about 6 degrees. Sorry, 18 degrees. Now, that actually ties in.
Yeah, but that could all be relative to the way
the
it
location.
Shifted.
Yeah, the location of Giza and the way it shifted, it actually matches, because when you look at Giza, the difference between, if you measure the difference in degrees from Giza to central Greenland, it's 54 degrees. Yeah, if you measure from Giza to the Arctic pole, it's 60 degrees. That's a difference. 60 minus 54 is your 6 degrees. So there's your shift. That's exactly what those shafts are showing us. They're showing us that the stars did move exactly what the ancient...
Those are the shafts they put those little robots down, right?
That's the ones, yeah. That's the ones, yeah.
I like that because that runs in right in with that theme of like an Atlantean civilization that some fucking cataclysm wiped out, and they knew it was coming and prepared for it. And I always like to say that we wouldn't even do that. We would be scrambling in the streets. We wouldn't even think about building something for the people who survive this shit. We would be like, watch my shit.
We're already doing it. We've done it. We've built the Svalbard Global Seed Vault up in the Arctic Circle. It opened in 2008 and contains just about every seed of every plant in the world. And they're now storing tree seeds in the vault. They've started doing that.
I think I heard that actually. You don't. How come you don't hear about that more? Like, I wonder how much it costs to get something in that vault.
Oh,
I wonder if they got weed seeds.
Weed seeds. What do you mean by weed?
No, that was just a D.
I got a question about the shafts. Staying on that topic for a bit,
Mm-hmm.
are the two lower shafts in the middle there? They don't go all the way to the outside, and then what about the really bottom shaft and how that goes out? Does that point to anything?
Right. Okay. Well, there's the shafts and there's passages. The lowest one, if you're looking at a pyramid schematic, obviously, they don't look very big. They just look like shafts, but there are actual passages there about 3 feet square. Whereas the actual shafts from the chambers, these are only about 8 inches square. So they're not for a person to walk through or anything like that. I mean, the Egyptologists, they explain it away by saying, "Oh, that's for the soul of the king." His soul would be blasted up and that would guide his path. I said, but wait a minute, if the king wants to go to that star over there, sure, that's the star. Why does he need 4 shafts? He was getting blasted all over the place.
And there's doors too, isn't there?
Yeah, well, they call them doors, but they're actually just
like plugs,
limestone plugs. Yeah, they're just limestone blocks.
Keeps the water out.
A couple of inches thick. But there's an interesting thing about what they discovered behind those doors. I think it was the Jedi, the Jedi Knight. When it got to drill through, or the first robot drilled through it, and Jedi put a camera, an optical camera, through the hole, and it found these markings in red ochre paint on the floor of it's a tiny chamber. I mean, the chamber, is probably only about 8 inches cube, something like that. It's not very big at all, this small chamber that the camera was peering into. But they found these red markings on the floor, and there's an Egyptologist, I can't quite mind the guy's name, but he specializes in Egyptian mathematics, and he had a theory that these markings represented the number, I think it was 121. Yeah?
Huh.
And written in some ancient Egyptian language. But the thing is, that small cavity is actually, how the pyramid was built in layers, block upon block upon block upon block, yeah? All the way to the top. It was built in layers, yeah? That small cavity with these markings, these mysterious markings, is at the same level as the Campbell's chamber. Now, Campbell's chamber is a chamber right at the very top above the King's chamber. It's the one with the apex roof, with the gable roof. And inside, it was discovered by Colonel Howard Weiss in 1837. He's the guy that found these markings, which I dispute. But anyway, could come to that later.
Are those the cuckoo markings?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Anyway,
I think everyone disputes those by this point.
Yeah. Well, I found the guy's original handwritten diary in a small library down in North London.
Huh.
It tells a completely different story from his published book.
Huh. Wow.
But anyway, that's another story.
Is that your next book?
Let's save that for later. We should come back to that, I feel like.
The next book is called Great Pyramid Hoax.
Yeah.
So there you go. But what I was going on to say is about the markings in Campbell's chamber, which Howard Weiss found. In there is the number 21. Yep. And 21 and 121, well, the 21 and 121 would be written the same as 21. Yeah? But they're
Except with an extra one?
Yeah, there'd be an extra one in the 121, but the 21 would be the same or should be the same in both. Yeah, but they're not. The 121 in this tiny cavity, which we have to assume are original markings, because no human hand has ever been in there since the time the pyramid was constructed. The 121 markings in that small cavity, they're genuine. But why is it written in a language that we don't even know what it says? We think it might be some much earlier Egyptian language, but it's not written. Remember, these markings are written at the same time because they're being built at the same level. These two cavities are at the same level of the pyramid, but one is written 21, and the other's written 21, and they're written completely different language. Why?
What's your theory?
Because the 21 in the Campbell's chamber, the markings that Howard Weiss found, are not genuine.
Vandalism.
That's just one of the tiny pieces of evidence that I've gathered about the markings in those chambers. Not just the Khufu marking, but the Khnum-Kuf markings all the way through. There's six cartouches in those chambers. The Khufu one's in the very top, but there's Khnum-Kuf, which is Khufu's full name. There's markings all over the chambers below, and I show how they are likely to be faked as well. But that's for another discussion.
That's another story for another day. So we should get back to the Secret Chamber of Osiris, because I think basically, we're coming around to the point where this shit was made as a sanctuary or a repository or like an escape plan for some sort of cataclysm that was going to cause the sky to shift.
Well, let's look at it from an Egyptian perspective, Graham, right? Look at what have they sent down to us? What traditions do we know of? Well, we have the legend or the myth of Osiris. Yeah, Osiris was the ancient Egyptian god of rebirth and regeneration. He was also the ancient Egyptian god of seeds and grain. Yeah, and the myth that comes down to us is that his body was cast into the Nile. That symbolizes the flood that was coming. His body was then found, and then his enemy, his brother Seth, then cut his body up into 16 pieces and scattered these pieces of Osiris across the land of Egypt. Now, so that's one legend that's come down to us. The other thing we have is the ancient Egyptian pyramid texts. Now, these are texts, religious texts, are the oldest religious texts that we have anywhere in the world. And they were found in a couple of pyramids at Saqqara, the Pyramid of Teti, the Pyramid of Unis. And in these texts, they say quite explicitly and quite clearly, the pyramid is Osiris. The construction is Osiris. That's what it says, clear as that, as clear as a bell. The pyramid is Osiris. So I got to think, well, wait a minute, Osiris's body, according to the legend, was cut into 16 pieces and scattered across the land of Egypt. So if the pyramid text tells the pyramid is Osiris, could these first 16 pyramids be Osiris? Or metaphorically, the Christian church today, metaphorically scattered all over the world, but it's metaphorically the body of Christ, okay? Similar idea. So what I did then was I got my good friend Google Earth and I mapped onto Google Earth the first 16 pyramids that the ancient Egyptians built. Now, I don't know if you've ever seen guys, I don't know if you've ever seen the classic figurine of Osiris. He's standing there with his arms crossed, with the royal regalia of power, crook and flail held in his hand. He's got the three-pronged Atif crown on his head. The centre prong is slightly taller than the two at the side, and then his legs go straight down. And he's obviously bound in white linen. So that's a classic Osiris image that has come down to us. And you see it in all the ancient Egyptian paintings of Osiris. Now, what I did when I plotted those 16 pyramids onto my friend Google Earth, I wasn't expecting really to find anything. But guess what I found?
It somehow matches that.
Yeah, I found an outline of the classic Osiris figure with the three-pronged headed crown, the middle part slightly taller, the crook and flail crossed over the arms, and the legs going straight down.
Almost like a constellation.
Well, yeah, it's what I'm basically saying is that the pyramid Osiris, Project Osiris was all about a project to give rebirth to the kingdom, not rebirth to the king. The original concept
Project Osiris, I like that. That'd be like what it would be called today.
Yeah. Project Osiris. Let's build. The plan was to build these 16 pyramids. Now, I'm not saying that the built this shape. I think the shape, someone probably, when they were plotting these on a drawing, well, look, you can make a shape of a person by doing this. I'm not saying they actually planned the shape of Osiris. I think the classic shape of Osiris came out of this, where they're located, because obviously, they would have to, the requirements of the locations of the pyramid would be determined by, like, being near to quarries and things like that, so it would be truly remarkable indeed if you could, draw a picture of Osiris, where all the quarries were naturally located. So I'm not saying that. I'm saying that the someone saw, like we look up the sky, it was just, that's where they built them. But somebody looked at it one day and said, oh, look, see if you join this dot here to here, you can make the shape of a person. Like we do, we look at a bunch of stars in the sky and we can draw lines between them and make all sorts of, shapes of animals and all sorts of things. I'm saying that's what happened. But I'm not saying that, that's what the plan, but that is how Osiris was born, if you like. And that is what their project Osiris was. And the thing is, you see, Egyptologists, they tell us, no, these are tombs for kings. If you take Project Osiris, you take all the giant pyramids in Project Osiris, I think there's 11 giant pyramids, they've only found what Egyptologists would call sarcophagi, granite blocks, and I think 4 of them. Yeah. But here's the crunch. In the granite box, I don't call them sarcophagi, I call them nebank. Neb means container, and ankh is the ancient Egyptian word for life. Neb-ankh, container of life. In the stone box of G2 in 1818, Giovanni Belzoni was the first modern explorer to find, or the first modern explorer that we know of, to get into the chamber within that pyramid. And he opened the granite box and he found, guess what?
Seed.
Very close. He found it filled with earth. He found the box.
So you would plant the seeds in the box.
Yeah,
and then when the sun come in the shafts?
No. There's no shafts in G2. But no, what I'm saying, it's a chthonic ritual. It's a chthonic ceremonial box. It's about the rebirth, symbolizing the rebirth of the earth, not the king, the earth. That's why there's earth in the box. Take what the ancient Egyptians did in later dynasties, the 11th, 12th dynasty. What were they doing? Well, they were making small stone boxes, about 12, 24 inches, 18 inches long, something like that. Sometimes made of stone, sometimes made of wood, and they were filling them with earth. And they were placing seed in the earth. Belzoni doesn't tell us anything about seed because he obviously wasn't looking for seed, but there probably was seed in the earth, because what he did find in the earth in this box in G2 was some bones of a bull, and the bull is associated with grain because the bull, and is also associated with Osiris. The bull would trample the grain into the earth. That's why that's a connection between the bull, and the bull was a symbol of the fecundity, the fertility of the earth. So this was a chthonic ritual. And the ancient Egyptians in later dynasties were making stone boxes filled with earth, sprinkled with grain, put a lid on them, buried them in the ground, and put a big boulder on top of them, symbolizing the pyramid. This tells you that the ancient Egyptians in later dynasties knew what was in these pyramids and knew what the stone boxes in these pyramids were for. They weren't for the body of a king. It was a chthonic ritual about the rebirth of the kingdom, not the rebirth of the king. That would come later.
That almost seems to me like the pyramids were more the birthplace of Egypt than a product of Egypt as we see it.
Darren, that's exactly what the ancient Egyptian creation myth tells us. The ancient Egyptian creation myth tells us that, the earth came up out of the floodwaters. They call it the primeval mound, which is the pyramid, came up out of the floodwaters, and the door of the pyramid opened, and everything in creation came out of the pyramid. Everything came out of the pyramid to replenish or to give birth to the land of Egypt. That's what the ancient Egyptian creation myth tells us. And I think it's absolutely true, because I think that's probably is what happened. One of the other things that the ancient Egyptians do, as well as making these small boxes like mini sarcophagi, what Egyptologists would call sarcophagi, which I call nebank, is they would make mud dolls of Osiris. Again, these would be about 18 to 20 inches tall. And these would be hollowed out. And in the hollow, they would fill this mud with grain. And then they would close it. And then they would bind it in linen, a mummy wrapping. These are called corn mummies. So here you have Osiris, the body of Osiris, a miniature effigy of Osiris filled with grain, just exactly as the pyramids were the body of Osiris filled with grain, and other stuff as well, tools and whatnot. The first pyramid at Saqqara, take the first pyramid at Saqqara, the giant, this is the first pyramid they built. Underneath that pyramid, there are literally kilometers of passageways. Yeah, kilometers of passageways underneath that pyramid. And the first explorers in the early 20th century went down there and started walking through these passageways. And what they found, they were walking through corridors and corridors up to their shins, up to their knees in grain.
Huh.
Not only that, but they found somewhere in the order of 40,000 storage vessels under that pyramid. So this is what I'm saying. The whole idea that these structures were used as tombs, the ancient texts tell us that, they were first and foremost, the first pyramids, the giant pyramids, were conceived as a recovery system, not of the king, but of the kingdom. The idea of a rebirth pyramid for the king would have evolved later. These smaller
Khufu was just the first one to do that. He's like, I'm getting buried in this bitch. And then everyone else started building pyramids too to get buried in.
Yeah, these are intrusive burials. The whole idea, the pyramid, the later dynasties knew that, these giant things, these are the things that were all about creation. These created our land. These are rebirth machines. These are rebirth engines. So the king's, I want a piece of that action. So he gets himself put in there either intrusively or builds a much smaller pyramid for himself. You see, this is the thing. If you look at the first pyramids, the giant pyramids, their construction work is infinitely superior to the work of the later dynasties of the 5th, 6th, 12th dynasties. The construction work of the later pyramids are much smaller, much cruder than the giant pyramids. The giant pyramids were built for a completely different purpose, two completely different phases, two completely different sets of builders for different functions. The functions of the first giant pyramids was Project Osiris, about saving the kingdom, about giving the kingdom rebirth. The later ones, well, maybe they built them in homage, or maybe they actually did build them to use as pyramids for their burial, which would be pretty daft, because then everybody sees where the king's body is. And in ancient Egyptian religion, the king's body is desecrated in any way at all. That means he dies forever. And what king is going to want someone to find his tomb in order to desecrate it, in order to kill him forever? An ancient Egyptian king's not going to want that to happen. So why is he going to tell someone where his tomb is?
So at this point, we can almost call the kingdom Atlantis. By our modern, if you look at Atlantis as being more of a civilization than a place, I guess, in history.
Yeah.
I'm sure I've read some theories a long time ago now that equated parts of Egypt with Atlantis. Now, I'm sure there are some texts. I think it's in the Temple of Karnak where it talks about that the kingdom is somewhere in the order of 40,000 years old. And that their previous kingdom was destroyed in a massive flood, So all this stuff is there. We just have to join the dots. And, what I've done here with the 16 pyramids is basically say, look, these are completely different from all the ones that came later. Look what we found. Look at the evidence we found in them. We found grain. Tons of it, and there's also secondary evidence, incidentally, that there was massive amounts of grain stored in the Great Pyramid. I explain this in the book. So these were vast repositories.
So that's commonly accepted. They found a bunch of grain in that shit.
Oh yeah, it's
all three of them.
No. Well, the whole idea, Darren. The whole idea is that, Darren, I'm glad you've got a cold, because I can tell it's you speaking. You've got a cold. No, what the whole idea, obviously, is that they can take the recovery items out of these pyramids. That was the whole idea. So, we're not actually expected to find anything. The reason we found material still in the Step Pyramid was because apparently some galleries there, the wall had collapsed and you couldn't actually get into them. All the other galleries... So it
was just left over.
It was left over, but all the other galleries were empty. So the whole idea, obviously, is that, they would take the material out of the pyramids. Because, see, when you think of it, look at the engineering of the Great Pyramid. Yeah? When you look at that closely in detail, and, with the mindset that this is to be the tomb of a king, his body is precious. If his body is desecrated in any way, he dies a second death. That's his death forever. There's no second chance, which would impact the kingdom as well, incidentally, because the king could no longer commune with the gods, which means he could no longer, the kingdom could no longer, get the benevolence of the gods. So, they had to, protect the king, his body at all costs. This massive tomb that can be seen from 40, 50 miles away, I ain't going to crack it,
It seems opposite to what it should be. Should be hidden somewhere, like you said.
Yeah, but if you're wanting, a recovery vault, you want that to be seen from 50 miles away.
Yeah. It seems like if you're right, and let's say it really seems like they were a civilization trying really hard to, it just seems so opposite from where we're at right now. We're so stuck in, what we're doing right now. We can't even think far enough ahead past, a 4-year election or whatever. And these guys were actually not sympathetic. What's the other word I'm thinking of? Empathetic to their future. And they know that in the past, fucked up shit has happened and we have to prepare for the future. So, and I mean, who knows? Maybe they believed in reincarnation, so they were going to be coming back anyways. So they might as well, work on shit now, so that when they come back, reincarnated, they're not going to be in some hellhole. That's interesting. So I wonder if they believed in the or the sacred geometry of a pyramid shape would help to restore or preserve these the goodies that they leave behind.
I think it's just because it's stronger.
Yeah, I mean, I think the pyramid shape. I mean, that shape is actually, deeply connected to the whole concept of rebirth, of regeneration, and that the pyramid shape is connected. It's called the capstone of the pyramid is called the Ben stone, which it gets its name from the ancient Egyptian Bennu bird, and the Bennu bird has similar properties to that of the phoenix, whereby it can regenerate itself out of the ashes of its own destruction. So that's a whole sort of mythological sort of concept behind that came down to us about the shape of the pyramid. But I mean, fundamentally, from a construction engineering perspective, a pyramid is the best, in ancient times. Without steel, it's the most stable structure, something that's wider at the bottom and narrower at the top. If you pour a bucket of sand onto the ground, it naturally forms a pyramid or cone shape, so because that's the nature's sort of natural, stable structure is a pyramid. But they're going to want it to be as big as possible, as strong as possible. They're going to want it to be waterproof. They're going to want to regulate the temperature inside it. That's why it was lined with these white casing stones, these marble white casing stones. From the Tura quarries at Tura, they basically would reflect the sun. They would keep the temperature inside the structures, stable and consistent. Because the one thing you don't want,
I like that.
The one thing you don't want with a massive storage of grain is the grain germinating. So you can't have fluctuation in the temperature. Temperature can be warm or temperature can be cool. You just don't want it varying or changing very much, because that's what causes the germination. So you have to keep the temperature consistent. So that's and of course these blocks were, they were placed together with a cement that is so strong and impervious. We still don't really know how they made it, or what it was, but it was watertight, so. And it was incredibly strong, So this is what you have. But the point I was saying was that, the internal. If this was a tomb, why leave the chamber, what's called the descending passage, that small sort of swivel door at the face of the pyramid, and I mean all the way down to the subterranean chamber, which is about 300 feet below the pyramid, but the passageway is about 300 feet long. So that it goes all the way down to the subterranean chamber, but it passes a junction of what's called the ascending passage, which takes you into the grand gallery and then on into the antechamber, into the king's chamber, and obviously the queen's chamber. But why, why has anyone allowed any access to the descending passage in the first place? Surely, if you're an ancient Egyptian king, the last thing you want is anyone remotely near it, wandering around inside it. You just don't want that. What you would have done is made sure that passageway was plugged with cement, with rock, all the way to the door. You would not have left that passageway open at all.
Well, the funny thing is, like, even from a modern day building perspective, I build things. And even like today, if you wanted to build some shit that was strong, even with steel or concrete or whatever you used, I mean, the strongest would be like a sphere, like a half a sphere would be stronger, would be the only thing stronger than a pyramid shape.
Yeah, absolutely.
So how do they do this then when they've got those shafts that, like you say, they're pointing to specific stars and they're built and you have to build around, like how can you even imagine them building this pyramid with what do you think of the mainstream view of how this happened?
I don't even know if we could pull it off today.
Yeah.
Well, I think we could probably, we could probably do it engineering wise. We could probably do it. It's whether we could actually find the money, the political will to do it. That's just a whole different ballgame. But I think, technically, yeah, we could do it. Whether
it'd be tough. It would be tough. To line up all those shafts and everything. Like I'm looking at right now in the middle of building an airport, and I'm looking at the fucking trouble these guys are having putting this thing together. And I just can't fucking imagine without any sort of modern machinery. I just can't see how it's. I think if you did it today, I think it would take 10 years. At least with today's technology and 2,000 or 5,000 men, it would take you 10 years minimum. Yeah, I think it'd probably be longer. But there's another thing about the engineering in there. Why, if this is a tomb, remember we keep told this, getting told by Egyptologists, this is a tomb of the king. Why? I don't know if you're aware of the antechamber, which is just before the king's chamber. The antechamber, it's a small chamber just in front of the opening of the king's chamber, and apparently it had these 3 blocks which slid down these grooves and blocked the entrance to the king's chamber. 3 granite slabs, and slid down these grooves, bump, 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 and that was the chamber sealed. They basically pull these chalks or these blocks from under the slabs. That would be them sealed. The thing is, there's a 4th block in the chamber that, incidentally, the 3 slabs that supposedly they are no longer there, but there's one slab that is still there. It's called a granite leaf, but this is a completely different thing. The grooves don't go all the way down to the ground. They stop about 3 feet high from the ground. This granite leaf, it's basically like a granite slab, a block, maybe about 3 or 4 inches thick in these grooves, but the grooves don't go all the way down to the bottom. A bit like it can move up and down like a guillotine. Yeah. Now, why would they leave that there? Because you could actually use the granite leaf as a counterweight to lift the granite slabs that were already there. Why would you? It's a bit like, you lock in all your house, lock it and you're leaving the key in the door. If this is a king's tomb, why are you leaving a device there that can be used as a counterweight to lift the granite slabs that are blocking the entrance to that chamber, to that vault? You wouldn't do it.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense.
Unless you actually wanted people to use it to lift these slabs to get into that vault. And then the junction where the descending passage meets the ascending passage, that's where, it's just incredible because the ascending passage has these granite blocks which block it. Now, I've looked into this, and to me, those granite blocks were built in situ. The plugs that block the end of the ascending passage, that supposedly they were slid down, the passageway having been stored in the Grand Gallery. And then, the guys that slid them down make good their escape out of the well shaft or something like that anyway. But to me, I've looked into this and I just cannot accept that, they could risk, just shoving these granite blocks, these tapered blocks down this shaft and hope it would work first time. They had to get it right first time, because if they stuck or jam or something, that's it. No, to me it looks like these granite plugs were actually built in situ. They're actually built in situ because, you wanted people to break in afterwards. You wanted access at the time of to get in and out of the pyramid. But, you wanted to seal it as well, early on. So that's what they did. These were actually built in situ, and that actually filled the chambers from the top. They lowered the sarcophagus, for example. The nebank, the granite box, it's too wide to go through the door of the king's chamber. So it was obviously lowered from the ceiling. Yeah? As would everything else that was stored, the grain or seeds, tools, whatever was stored in these chambers would be stored, it would be entered from above. That's why they could block it in situ, but you can't do that for a tomb.
I wonder if they dumped it all down those shafts.
That's what I was thinking.
That was like the loading chute.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too.
Yeah.
Like a storage, like that's where all this shit gets stored.
Like those little 8-inch shafts that go to the chambers, that's where they dumped all the grain in and then they plugged it up.
Yeah, absolutely. And I believe that the Grand Gallery, which is an extension of those shafts, that was a storage, probably the main storage vault of the entire system. That's the theory. Obviously, in the myth of Osiris, we're told that there's one part of Osiris's body that his wife Isis went around trying to find all the parts of the body. And there's a part that she couldn't find. And I think that's an allegory or a metaphor for saying there's a part hidden somewhere.
Well, I was looking at the overhead of the Giza Plateau, and that seems like that'd be, if you drew a circle around that, the center would be outside it. I wonder maybe there's something in the middle of that circle.
Well, this is what I came up with the found by the three and the triangle that I was talking about earlier, that you can draw around the three pyramids using the three most ancient centroids. It points to this location to the southwest of the plateau, which I tried to get to, and which I struggled really hard. Now, I have stood between the paws of the Sphinx. I've read the Dream Stela, which stands between the paws of the Sphinx. And there's some badge-carrying Egyptologists who can't even get access to the Sphinx, So I was able to do that. But this little piece of desert, this plain, untouched piece of desert was blocked off. It was fenced off. I tried getting to it from the north. It was blocked off by a thing called Zahi's Wall. That Zahi built this wall, and it was only about 200 yards, or maybe less than that, where I was confronted by this wall. So I decided to attack it from the south. And again, same thing, fences, security towers, all sorts of stuff.
How big of an area are you thinking? Like how big?
Oh, well, I walked for about 4 or 5 kilometers. I couldn't get in. I just couldn't get into.
That's got to be the entrance to something.
So anyway, I wrote to Zahi. Yeah, I wrote to Zahi Hawass about it afterwards, and I explained the theory, and I asked him why is this wall there, and he said it's to protect this bland sort of stock answer. It seemed like it's a stock answer to protect the guests of Egypt, whatever that means. Anyway, so I explained to him the theory, and that was in December 2008, and then I think February, March 2009. Guess what happened?
It got a lot of attention.
They started excavating. You can go onto Google Earth. You know how Google Earth has got this time lapse? You can go back in time to see a specific part of the Earth, years ago, and then it shows you time lapse. You can see the development of that piece of land. Well, in December 2008, it was just desert. The location I'd identified was just desert, and then I think it's February, March, round about then, 2009. There was all sorts of dumper trucks, diggers, all sorts of stuff, moving away the sand, excavating the whole area. And to this day, I've written to Zahi about it, and he hasn't replied, unfortunately. But to this day, you can get and see that they've covered it over with something. I'm not sure what it is. It looks like concrete or something. I'm not sure. But the whole area, it was just desert before. It's now all covered over with concrete. And before they got the cover over it, a chap I know, Dennis, managed to do some gamma filtered photographs of the area, and he actually found a geometrical shape under the sands. So, hey guys, you can go and look at it for yourselves. I'm not making this stuff up. You can go and look at it for yourselves. What's there, I don't know. I wish that was the very spot that I was going to place I took a little capstone piece of granite from Scotland when I went in 2008. I was hoping to place it there at the apex of this theoretical triangle which I had drawn around the Giza pyramids at this location. I was hoping to bury it there, say a few words from the hymn to Osiris, just as a homage, but I never quite made it there. But certainly it looks to me like it's a place of interest right now in Egypt.
Wow. Was it hard for you to decide whether to include Zahi on your theory at all?
Well, at that time, I mean, if you wanted anything to happen,
you had to go through him, right?
You had to go through him. I mean, that's the proper channel, if that's to put it. So there wasn't really anything else really you could do.
Maybe you didn't bring enough hookers with you.
Oh, leave that one.
Just kidding. So they had a wall built around it already, and basically stalling or waiting for something. And now the heat, you've turned up the heat, and they're like, okay, we got to get this shit out of here before they start. They start doing gamma filtered photos from above.
Yeah, well, there you go. Is it coincidence? It seems a hell of a coincidence to me that, just months after me informing Zahi of this theory, and obviously it must have made sense to somebody, because there you go, the whole site has been totally excavated. But as I said, not before we managed to get some gamma filtered photographs which showed there's some geometrical form at that location.
Stargate.
Yeah. Yeah.
So before we start wrapping up here, Scott, do you want to talk? Is there anything else you want to mention to us?
I mean, I could sit here and talk all night, you guys. I could. But no, just I think there's obviously, there's a lot more material to come. There's an awful lot of material in the book. It talks about how I believe the structures were built. And that's in the book, and there's good evidence to support my theory that the builders used a form of ancient balloon, hot air balloon, because there's these giant pits right beside the pyramids. They're not just ordinary pits; they're about 15, 20 feet deep, but they're side by side, and they're connected by a horizontal channel at the bottom, like a U shape. And I believe these were like a massive Dakota fire pit. I don't know if you're familiar with a Dakota fire pit. Basically, you start a fire in one of the pits, and the other pit is used as oxygen and what that does is it creates a really, really fierce fire. It burns very, very efficiently, really, really hot, a lot hotter than a conventional fire, and it produces virtually no smoke. So I'm saying that would be ideal, to use for a hot air balloon. And then I present some evidence in the book where you can actually, what looks like a hot air balloon being filled with air, and then from ancient Egyptian carvings, and then the hot air balloon actually vertical flying with what looks like stones being carried below it. So there's evidence in the book about that, and explain how it would have worked. So as I said, I could sit here and talk all night. But obviously, there's some stuff in the book about the Vice forgery as well. There's a fair bit there, which from his handwritten field journal, which I managed to track down to a small library in North London last year, which basically, as I said earlier in the show, it gives a different account to what is actually published in Vice's operations at Giza, his 2-book volume that he published. That gives a slightly different, well, not slightly different, but a significantly different account to what actually happened. So, but as I say, there's some of that in the book, but I've got a lot more evidence since then about the whole Vice thing that will be going into my book I'm working on right now, which
the Great Pyramid Hoax.
The Great Pyramid Hoax, which I'm glad to say Inner Traditions has accepted for publication.
Oh, that's good. Wow. When is that coming out then?
That'll be December, probably December 2016.
Oh, okay. So we got a while to wait for that still, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully you can make Grimerica your first stop.
Well, you guys will be in my Skype list, and you're in my email now, so
that's good.
Don't you worry.
So do you think, one last question here, do you think it's opening up at all? Like the mainstream paradigm is starting to crack?
Well, I was speaking to an Egyptology friend of mine. I can't give their name or their detail because they've got a job to do and they need to make a living.
Right. Yeah.
And if they say who they are, they basically just get their grants cut. They get blocked for permits and all sorts of stuff. Just their persona non grata, speak out of line. Well, they were saying to me that the Khufu cartouche, the markings in these pyramids, they said, we know they're fake, but we just can't say.
Wow.
So to me, it sounds like, the old guard is still there, and they're probably going to be there for some time yet. But this Egyptologist said to me, younger Egyptologist, I'm hopeful for the future if this is what, this person has said to me, there's more forward-thinking Egyptologists now than there probably ever were. So I'm kind of hopeful that it is opening up a bit, but I think it probably won't happen in my lifetime, but hopefully in the not too distant future, we'll start to really get the answers, because, the answers that are in these books, I just have so many questions about them. It just doesn't jive for me at all. Just too many questions, too many things that just do not fit and are contradictory. It just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, and hopefully as things are discovered around the rest of the world as well, that kind of puts additional pressure, I think, on the Egypt story.
Well, this is it. That we're, as I said at the top of the show, Graham. We're digging deeper, we're diving deeper, and we're finding stuff. And long may it continue, because it's pushing the barriers of civilization, the boundary of civilization, further and further and further back in time. And I'm fairly convinced that these structures at Giza, well, the first 16 pyramids were Project Osiris. It was all to do with a shift in the Earth's axis. They believed a catastrophe was coming, and this all happened 19,000 years ago when the Ice Age went into meltdown. It's all part of the same event.
That's fascinating. It's an interesting time here where all this stuff's happening. I appreciate your work with all this stuff, and you and this whole crew of alternate history researchers, and it is truly fascinating.
Long may it continue.
Yeah.
Where is there any place else our listeners can track you down, or you're on the YouTube or the Facebook?
Well, I don't actually do
Twitter?
social media. I'll go. I have a website that's www.scottcreighton.co.uk. There's lots of photographs there. There's lots of presentations. There's lots of essays that people can download. I'll be putting a few more up in the next couple of weeks or so. But there's stuff there people can go and look at. They can get details of my books there as well. But no, I don't do social media. I've got an objection to Facebook. You post photographs of your stuff on Facebook, they can just grab it and use it, which I disagree with. So I don't do that for copyright reasons.
Right on.
Makes sense.
Yeah. Well, we want to thank you for coming on, and we'll link to all that in the show notes, all your websites and all that kind of stuff. And keep up the good work, and keep in touch for when your next book comes out.
Yeah, it's been a blast, guys. I've thoroughly enjoyed myself.
Great. Thanks a lot, Scott.
Now you can get some sleep.
Yeah, I finished the coffee. I think I'll go and have another one. Or maybe not.
Thanks
Cheers,
a lot,
guys.
Scott.
Thank you for your time.
Yeah.
Okay.
See you next time.